All right, everyone, let's talk about some news. Now, I wanted to do a more casual video because, I came back at the beginning of the year with a video and said, I'm going to get back to doing regular content, but for 2 weeks, I posted nothing. And the reason is because, well, long story short, my father's health took a bad turn. Um, and, I haven't really had the spare time. And when I have, I've wanted to game, but, things are looking up, I think, but getting back to more regular game and stuff. And plus, I like doing videos. But today we're going to be talking about Anthem, some other gaming news. But I'm just going to put out the link quick because this is going to be a longer video than normal. I just want to talk about a bunch of topics. This is going to be casual, but let's get into it. I'm just going to post the link onto Twitter because YouTube can be useless a lot of the time. Okay. You gotta love how YouTube tries to, you know, help gamers out, or should I say, YouTube creators out by like not helping them in any way. Oh, it's so annoying. Anyway, I'm just gonna post this link onto Twitter. Help gamers out, or should I say, YouTube. And okay, just copy in. Bear with me for a moment, because again, this video is going to be longer than normal. Okay, just while I'm posting the link, just want to say that the Anthem stuff. Now I'm going to talk about the Anthem beta, which I personally haven't played. I was in the alpha, and I thought with the demo coming up, we can talk about it. The truth is that we can't talk about the alpha forever. So it's not like the Doom alpha where we could talk about it as soon as the beta finished. No, no, no. We can't talk about it for the rest of existence. So I'm going to talk about people's issues from the beta, and I'm going to talk about what BioWare have said, but some of the BioWare stuff. Now, when it comes to BioWare, Anthem, a lot of people have been wondering like what type of game is this? Because people have the right to be worried about how this is going to affect BioWare's games going forward. Because look, personally, I think Anthem will be a hit. I can say that, and I think it's going to be a hit because I think people are expecting this game that's exactly like Destiny when in actuality it's very different than Destiny. Now, when it comes to the differences, I'll say this now: when the beta is open to everyone, I will talk about the gameplay and post footage and whatnot. But they said this game isn't going to affect how Dragon Age is going to be, how Mass Effect is going to be. So I wouldn't worry about that. And there's Dragon Age fans and Mass Effect fans that are worried that this is a different BioWare where there's not going to be romance options, a more deeper story, extremely detailed multiplayer expansions. Like they think that this is going to be just a different type of game, and it is for the most part. It's a different type of game, and I think once people have played this game, they'll see that yeah, it's different, but they'll like it. This is just a different type of Bioware game. And like I was one of those people. I was freaking out, thinking this is how Bioware is going to be going forward. And look, I could jump on the EA hate train and say, look, they're going to put in loot boxes when they originally said they weren't. I could have said all that, but they've been open about the development of this since the beginning. And if you go all the way back to Mass Effect 3 kind of had loot boxes, but no one really talked about it because it wasn't invasive in any way. You got ammo packs, skins, that type of thing. But in this, you can buy and earn cosmetics. You can earn them in game or get them with, real life money. And I would rather have the option of that than have a loot box, because with a loot box, you can get the same thing multiple times and you don't know the odds really going into these games. But when it comes to Anthem, people are complaining in the demo that there's rubber banding, that they're not prepared. And I think that maybe BioWare should have not done the demo the way they've done it, have you higher level, because from what I'm hearing, the demo sounds very different to what I played. And I can't clearly see anything because again, things could have changed, dialogue could have even changed, like everything could have changed slightly. But what I played sounds different. And when I get to play the demo, I'll do another live stream or whatever. But I think people need to give BioWare a chance. Like, look at Mass Effect Andromeda. And I'm going to be completely open about this because when it comes to Mass Effect Andromeda, we had no gaming information, right? No information whatsoever for months. The game was coming up and no one knew anything about it. And then it got to maybe a few weeks or a few months before release, and they made some comment about how, they paid close attention to The Witcher 3, and, that gave a lot of people a lot of hope. And well, how did that turn out? And look, I like Mass Effect Andromeda. It's not a perfect game, but it has a lot of problems when it comes to a lot of aspects of the game. But again, it's still an enjoyable game. But this is the team that made Mass Effect 1 through 3. Like, this is going to be the A team's game. And they've had developer diaries out. They've had live streams for maybe 4 months now. Like, they clearly know what they're talking about. And they've clearly looked at things like Destiny. And while I say the game's not like Destiny, it does have things in common, because we live in a world now where we have looter shooters and, these looter games. And that's completely fine. But I think people need to just give it a chance. Because, like me, for instance, I was so hyped for Destiny before launch. And then when I got it, I was just disappointed. And I wasn't disappointed because it was a bad game. I was disappointed because it wasn't what I originally thought it was going to be. Because Destiny was this kind of advertised as this, sci-fi RPG FPS. But what it was this sci-fi type of RPG that plays and has aspects of an MMO. And to this day, people still call Destiny an MMO. And I just laugh because, like, do they not know what MMO stands for? That said, Destiny has some of the best shooting mechanics in any game ever. But I'm looking forward towards Anthem because one, it's another BioWare game, it's a sci-fi game. But I think we're going to get something that's truly spectacular. Like, and I would have said that before I even played the alpha because it just looks different, like the gameplay. Like, think about how many games do we have where you can fly around like Iron Man? We don't have many, do we? Now, when the demo goes out to more people, because personally, I think demos and stuff like this shouldn't be gated to pre-orders and whatnot. I understand the EA access thing because it's an incentive and it's their service. It makes sense. But I've never really understood the whole point of gating a beta or demo behind a pre-order. That just seems weird. Not necessarily saying it's a disgusting practice, but we see it more often than not, and most of the time now we don't see any changes before the release and what we played beforehand. Like, look at Division. I played that game in the closed alpha, the closed beta, the open beta, and by the time the game came out, I was bored of it. I could not play any more of Division. And it's a good game from what I've been told, and from what I've played in when it was X enhanced, and when it went into not EA Access, Game Pass. Like, I really enjoyed some of it, but frankly, that's just not a game for me. Gorgeous game though, and I think people just need to give it a chance. And when the demo's open to everyone, they'll probably flip on more servers then. And if people aren't sold by it, then well, you make your choice. But I've seen people just wanting this game to fail. And if you think about it, we just live in this age where all these games are destined to fail because a game comes out, people make infinite memes about it, and like, what does that do to the developers? And that's really bugged me for a while now. Like, when it came to No Man's Sky, people had genuine problems with it because think about it, at launch, it didn't have any, or shall I say, most of the features people were promised. But what is it now? It's exactly what people said. I shall say the developers said, and good on them. They actually eventually got around to it. And I'm not saying, there's people that said, "Oh, it should have been like that at launch." That's true. That is true. But you got to commend the developer for actually going ahead and fixing the game and taking their time when during that time they probably weren't making any money. Just putting it out there. But when it comes to Anthem, just give them a chance. Just because it's an EA game doesn't mean you have to automatically hate on it. And look, EA mess up all the time. They've cancelled so many Star Wars games. And let's talk about Star Wars games. This is going to get a bit ranty. So when the Star Wars deal happened in, I believe it was 2013, I thought, well, with all their developers, we're going to get a first-person shooter. We're going to get a third-person action-adventure. We're going to get some open-world games, maybe a pod racing game, a Rogue Squadron. We're going to get all these new games. And we got that first Battlefront, and I thought, you know what? This is the first game. Give them time. And then years happen. Then we get Battlefront 2, and it was probably the biggest controversy that year. People were buying the game and just discovering that you had to. It was kind of pay to win at first, but they did patch it. But man, like, that Star Wars license has just gone to waste. Like, who would have thought EA, one of the biggest publishers in gaming, could mess up the Star Wars license? Like, we can't even get a pod racing game. How hard is it to do a pod racing game? Hell, I keep mentioning Rogue Squadron on Twitter, by the way. They have the technology. They have pretty much everything they need for a Rogue Squadron game right now, and it's in Star Wars Battlefront 2. Like, they just have to make it its own game, but it's a year. Yeah, and people do have the right to point a finger at and say, look, everything they make in now has to be games as a service. And people are right. I don't necessarily think games as a service is a bad thing. It just has to be done right. Look at Halo 5. That's games as a service. It's done right. But you also have to look at another EA game, Mass Effect 3. That's also games as a service. You could buy those weapon packs with real money, and no one blinked an eye at the time because it was fair. If you won 3 silver matches, you were able to buy the most expensive crate with in-game currency. But it just seems like some games now just go way overboard. You have to pay way too much, and it's sickening sometimes. Then we have to look at things like, oh well, let's look at Amy Hennig, right? They get how is she, the creative director or something for Uncharted 1 and 2, and like, they got her to make a Star Wars game, and they were surprised that it was a Star Wars Uncharted game. Like, what were they thinking? Like, that would have been amazing. A third-person action-adventure set in the Star Wars universe. Like, but no, it got Thanos. And it just seems like every good-looking, or should I say, every cool-sounding Star Wars game gets cancelled. That's Star Wars 1313. Granted, that wasn't EA, that was Lucasfilm and ILM, but every Star Wars game just seems to be getting cancelled. That Darth Maul game got cancelled. Apparently, like 3 or 4 EA Star Wars games got cancelled. Two of them are mobile, from what I heard. But it just seems all this EA is just making all these weird choices, and it doesn't make any sense because we're going into next gen, and they put out virtually nothing now. They probably just love the fact they're making all the money off FIFA. But anyway, I don't want this to be an hour of me ranting about EA and Star Wars. Let's talk about the Metroid thing, right? So bear in mind, this is an Xbox channel. I talk about BioWare stuff. You know, if you follow me on this channel, it's Xbox, sci-fi, and BioWare games, right? That's essentially what I'm going to talk about most of the time. But this Nintendo thing is really interesting because, you know, was it 2017, they put up a splash screen of Metroid Prime 4, should I say, and people lost it. There's streams and videos of people losing it online. And, you know, frankly, if people love those games, and they looked cool, and I only got to play one on the Wii, but like people generally want the new one. And when that was announced, everyone lost it. Everyone. So when it came to this fourth one being announced, and it wasn't Retro Studios, you know, Retro's been quiet for a long time, and we hear nothing for years, like 2 years or something, year and a half. But Nintendo came out and they were open about it. And think about it, like really think about it. When has a developer, or should I say a publisher, came out and said, look, it didn't turn out to the way we wanted it, we're starting again with a different developer? That never happens. Ever. And, you know, I want to say, like, you've got to commend, like, Nintendo for actually, like, you know, telling their fan base this type of thing because, look, they didn't have to. They could have not told anyone, and this information may have leaked 1, 2, 3, 4 years from now, and then the retro game would come out. But I think they just wanted to let the fan base know, look, it's not coming this year. It's not coming next year. That's probably a 2022 game, 2023 game, max. And, you know, people will eventually get a good game now. Now, this past week, there was some specs. Now, I'm going to go over the specs in a different video because, like, that's way too much for this. But I want to talk about just the whole next gen talk in general because it's exciting talking about next gen stuff. But if you like me and you notice these things, like next gen talk started, like it ramped up a lot the second the Xbox One X came out. Like, did no one notice? Like, if you go on Reset Era, it was like the day after the Xbox One X came out, there was a big thread on next gen. It's like, so we've gone about not caring about power to talking about next gen. And then, you know, I see these multiple arguments online all the time now. It's like people don't care about power, but the Xbox One won't be the most powerful. It's like you're being awfully defensive, you know? And again, you know, it's just like I think people, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll notice that there's been like a change. Like I used to make tons of like memes and stuff, and I just got bored of it. You know, I'll make the occasional one if some company messes up in a funny way, but like if you really think about it, like, you know, these companies, they just obviously they all want our money. Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony, but like Microsoft has done a lot lately. Like they've gotten some studios, a lot of studios. You know, a lot of them studios are hiring. There's rumors of more studios, and you know that's a lot of games coming. You know, Microsoft is clearly preparing for next gen, and if you look at everything that they've done lately, and you know, whenever you hear Phil Spencer in an interview, they're always talking about how they've got the platform where they want it now, the hardware, shall I say, and that really says something because they're clearly talking about power. Like the Xbox One S is a fine console. It's a really cool console. It's small, it's quiet, and frankly, I've still got mine hooked up. It's a good console. It's a unified looking system now, and I think that's what they're going to continue going forward. Because look, Brad Sams came out with a video, or shall I say, an article 2 weeks ago. Oh no, it was like 3 weeks ago of all these new consoles coming out. There's the Lockhart, there's the Maverick, Scarlet Cloud. There's all these things, right? And if you go back to like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, there was all these rumors of like, an Xbox Stream Stick or a smaller, an Xbox Apple TV like device. And if you think about how things are now, you hear about, Apple's maybe investing more in gaming, just on for their iPhones and stuff. You have Google that's rumored to have a console coming out, but they also have a streaming service coming out. They have Amazon also coming out with a streaming service. Verizon is also going to do a streaming service. Like it's insane. Then you have that Madbox thing. Like the gaming environment is changing drastically right in front of us, and it's kind of weird because we just got these mid-gen refreshes, and then just there's been this massive unloading of next-gen talk. Like I'm completely fine with my Xbox One X. I see people online all the time talking about, oh, we need 4K 60, 4K 60. Personally, I don't think 60 FPS is needed. Well, should I say not needed in a lot of, genres, like, like third-person action adventures. Like, that gives me motion sickness. That looks horrible. But regardless, I think people need to calm down with the next-gen stuff, because look, next-gen, realistically, is November 2020, right? That's a long way away. We've got plenty of time to enjoy these consoles. And look at all the games coming out soon. There's Kingdom Hearts 3. We just had Resident Evil 2 drop. We've had Ace Combat drop. There's games like DMC coming out. Like, there's like a lot of games coming out this year. This year has the potential to rival 2007. And all this next gen talks, it's fascinating. Like there's some stuff I'm going to talk about soon about next gen stuff. Not in this video, but like I think we just need to calm down, because like people didn't just drop that money on these new consoles to just automatically just jump into a new system. Next gen talk's exciting, because I think it's because last gen was too long. Like how long was last gen? That was years. Like I remember going back to 2012, talking to all my mates, thinking like, where the hell are these new consoles? Because it just seemed like another year would come and there would be no console announcement. We all know pretty much why last gen was so long. It's because the economy tanks. But it's different this time, because do we need a generation that long again? Probably not. The CPUs in these consoles, we need better ones. But when it comes to next gen stuff, like I'm not really excited a lot about the whole having 60 FPS thing. Like I'm on about the amount of enemies on screen. I want just better shadows. I want to have more interior buildings in open world games, stuff like that. Just because, like, while having like if I'm playing a racer, I want it to be 60 frames per second. But at the same time, I've played Forza Horizon in 4K 30, and that's amazing. So it's like, which is it? It's a case by case basis. It's like when it comes to the next Rockstar game. Like, look how impressive Red Dead Redemption 2 is. Like, granted, they messed up the HDR, but like what that game is, the detail of the world. Like in one of the towns, you see a house getting built over time, and towards the end of the game, it's finished. Like it's just stuff like that, and that's the type of thing I want to see. Like Red Dead Redemption 2 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey are two prime examples of what I want to see next gen. Like you have a lot of stuff happening on screen at times. Like look at the character movement in Red Dead Redemption. That's insane. Look at the scope of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Like those are two prime games to look at when it comes to next gen. And then there's the whole ray tracing element. Are we really getting ray tracing next gen? Maybe in the midlife refreshes, because when Nvidia came out on stage last year and they said they had ray tracing running real time on this like $100,000 computer, and then they've all of a sudden got working on this graphics card, and you can get Battlefield barely hitting 30 frames per second. Like, there's things you can do to change that, obviously. You know, things get cheaper, parts get smaller, easier to make. But is it realistic to think in 2020 we're going to see ray tracing on consoles, on $500 or below consoles? I'm just saying, like, maybe. You know, I'm not going to be someone that pretends to know everything when it comes to specs, because that's just not me. I know some stuff, but I'll leave that to other people. Ray tracing looks cool though. Granted, it does look like the next big thing when it comes to the visual department. Now, next up, and yeah, I wasn't really prepared for today's video because it was meant to be just about Anthem, but oh yeah, 18% of developers are reportedly working on next gen games. Now, that's what's really interesting, because there's a reported kind of Bioshock game coming out in no year. We just know it's in development. There's BioWare working on multiple games. They work, and I'm going to be talking about Mass Effect in a future video, but Dragon Age is a next gen game. But when I saw Cyberpunk 2077, I'm thinking, could that run on any of these consoles? I should say the base consoles. Because look, as much as I say I like HDR, as much as I say I like 4K, like realistically, the base consoles games still look good. I don't care what people say. It's just that, you know, the whole 4K element and the HDR element, they look really nice at the end of the day. Good on the eyes. But Cyberpunk 2077 looks like just an open world, the Deus Ex I've always wanted. And realistically, I can't see that actually happening this gen. Like they said originally in 2012, when it's ready, then they didn't actually really start development until like 2014, shall I say. Development for that game was all over the place. But like, that's a game that's probably going to be amazing. But when does that come out? Is that a next gen game? We're not getting an Assassin's Creed game this year, so next gen Assassin's Creed. You know, it's interesting that we know that's the number of developers working on next gen games, because we all know that next gen's next 100%. But like, does Microsoft go and make more games on the next gen and like mid gen refreshes? And that's going to be tough, because like, does PlayStation, does Xbox, do they go and look, we're going to take these X amount of millions of people and not give them the chance to buy the game? And then you have to say, so should the developers dumb down the game a bit so it can work on all the platforms? And it's like, well, it's either one or the other. Frankly, I think both will let games, you know, they'll make them playable on last gen. They'll just be like toned down a lot, you know, be like, you know, less enemies on screen. Like, look at the last gen version of Shadow of Mordor in Rise of the Tomb Raider. Like, those games look fine on there, kind of, but they work, and that's the big thing. Anyway, I just wanted to do a quick newsy type video, because I can't talk about Anthem yet. But yeah, like I said at the beginning of the video, why I haven't been able to why I haven't been able to get more videos out, because of the family situation. And you know, I'm gonna have more out soon. I promise that. Please like and share on Twitter, Facebook, or wherever you may go. And yeah, this has been cool. And I hope everyone has a very good day. I'm out. Have a good one.